Alright, starting lesson 9.3a, geometric sequences in series. A sequence where consecutive terms have a common ratio is known as a geometric sequence. Okay, so for example, I take 4, I divide it by 2, I get 2. I take 8, I divide it by 4, I get 2. I take 16, divided by 8, I get 2. I have a common ratio. All right, so then that means it's a geometric sequence. Now for example 1, for each of the geometric sequences, find the common ratio. Okay, so I just take 9, I divide it by 3, and I get 3. I take 27, I divide it by 9, I get 3. I take 81, divided by 27, and I get 3. The common ratio is 3. Alright, then I take 20, I divide by 10, and I get 2. Then I take 40, I divide by 20, and I get 2. I take 80, I divide by 40, and I get 2. So the common ratio is 2. For part C, I take 1/16 divided by negative 1/4. This is a complex fraction. You should know how to simplify this. Multiply by the reciprocal of the denominator. Don't forget that negative there. Maybe I'll include the negative up here just so you don't forget it. All right. And I have negative 4/16, which reduces to negative 1/4. Then I have negative 1/64 divided by 1/16. Multiply by 16/1. And I get negative 16/64, which is negative 1/4. Then I'll do it one more time. 1/256 divided by 1/negative 1/64. Multiply by negative 64/1. And I get negative 1/4. There's my common ratio, negative 1/4. All right, now we have a formula to work with. A sub n is equal to a sub 1 times r to the n minus 1. R is your common ratio. So for example 2, write the first 3 terms of the geometric sequence whose first term is 2 and whose common ratio is 4. All right, that's easy. So it says write the first 3 terms. Well, I already know the first term is 2. That's easy. So then there's the second term, and I have a sub 1, which is 2, and then r, which is 4, and then n, which is 2. All right, so just applying the formula there. All right, make sure to work out the exponent first before anything else. So 4 to the first power, 2 times 4, which is 8. Then I have a sub 3, which is 2 times 4 to the 3 minus 1 power. So I have 2 times 4 to the second power. I have 2 times 16. Okay, so then I have 2, 8, and 32 for my first 3 terms. Done. All right, find the 9th term of the geometric sequence whose first term is 4, that's your a sub 1, and whose common ratio is 1/2. All right, that's easy. Once again, just plugging your pieces into the formula. I want the 9th term, so I use the first term, which is 4, times the common ratio, raised to the n minus 1 power. N is 9, so minus 1. So 4 times 1/2 to the 8th power. And I end up with 4 times 1/256. And then that cancels out, I get 64. So I end up with 1/64 for my 9th term, a sub 9. Done. Okay, here we have to find the 10th term of the geometric sequence. All right, so the 10th term is equal to a sub 1, which is 6, times the common ratio. I don't know what the common ratio is. Well, you could figure that out easily. Just take the second term divided by the first. So negative 1/3. So it's times negative 1/3 to the what power? It's going to be n, which which is 10 minus 1. So 6 times negative 1/3 to the 9th power. And I get 6 times negative 1 over 19,683. And then that's equal to negative 2 over 6561. And that's all there is to it. That's our 10th term. Done. All right, the second term of the geometric sequence is negative 18, and the fifth is 2/3. Find the sixth term. This one's a bit more interesting. Okay, so that's the second term. That's the fifth term. All right, well, we did a similar problem when we were working with arithmetic sequences. If I want to get to the fifth term from the second term, what would I do? All right, I would multiply the common ratio how many times? Well, if I multiply the common ratio once, that takes me to the third term. If I do it again, that takes me to the fourth. If I do it again, that takes me to the fifth. So in other words, this is my formula for figuring out the common ratio. So I have the fifth term, which is 2/3. I have the second term, which is negative 18. Then I have r, which is, let's figure it out. I'm going to divide by negative 18 here. Over 1. And I have 1 over 18. Alright, so then we get 9 here. We also have a negative. Don't forget that negative. Alright, so I have negative 1 over 27. Alright, now I take the cube root of both sides. Alright, and r is equal to negative 1 over 3. Okay, so I have that. Now it's asking me to find the sixth term. Alright, so I can use my formula now. So I'm going to figure out what a sub 1 is. Alright, and I just figured out my common ratio, and I know the second term is negative 18. R is negative 1/3. That's the first power, and I'll divide by negative 1/3 then. Alright, and when I work that out, I get a sub 1 is equal to 54. Alright, so applying the formula, a sub 6 is equal to 54 times negative 1/3 to the 6 minus 1 power, and that will give me negative 2/9. Alright, we could have just as well have taken this, and I have the fifth term, and since I want the sixth term, I'll just multiply it by the common ratio then, right? So this is another way of doing it. Just take the fifth term and multiply by the common ratio, and that'll take you to the sixth term. So negative 1/3 times 2/3. Alright, so a sub 6 is equal to negative 2/9. Done. That's all there is to the lesson. Begin the assignment at the bottom of the webpage.